And go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Tower Dive. It's a very special episode of Tower Dive. It's we'll be breaking down the upcoming Arena of Valor World Cup 2019. My name is still TJ, and I'm still joined by the wonderful head writer of DTwoAOV.com, Daniel D2 Akuta.
That did change since the last time we did a Tower Dive podcast.
And I was like in full flow too.
Yeah, wait, what? Oh, yeah, because you remembered how it goes. That's exactly. Anyway, this is going to...
none of it worked.
No, none of it worked at all. Sorry, but
this
unlike...
is why we edit.
But not this time. We're not editing this time. So, you might be tuning into the podcast. You might be tuning into my YouTube channel. But unlike most of the podcasts that we did in the past, this is not clean. This is not concise. This is long and rambling and everything that TJ hates.
They asked for another episode of the Tower Dive podcast.
Yes.
And their pleas fell on deaf ears. To me. You, on the other hand, wanted to make it happen. So this is the Tower Dive podcast as envisioned, as brought into life by D2. And that means they have to suffer for their tower diving.
We will see how long the end time is on this, because we have a lot to get through as we preview, segue, into preview the 2019 World Cup of Arena of Valor, the WC AOV.
June 27th, the AWC will happen, and it will be pretty exciting because we'll both be providing broadcast on it on various official channels for the English language. The majority of it will be covered online. So this is kind of a companion piece to it. Hey, I heard you wanted to know more about the AWC podcast, but Tower Dive is a lot smaller.
Right. Wait, I don't even know how you ended that, but we'll move on. So, starting off
we're going to rename it.
Oh, okay. Well, we can figure that out later. Anyway.
Okay.
Let's start off this podcast / video, TJ, with a review about what happened at the 2018 AIC, and I recall you cast that particular one.
I did some online coverage of it. We ended in the studios in Burbank for the Valor series set. That was with Paul and Viram Toddkill, not to bring back memories of the other people I cast with in front of you. But it was a very exciting AIC. It was the second time we'd seen true international competition, depending on whether or not you count the first AIC, which I don't. And it was a pretty exciting time because we shook up the world order. AHQ, the top team that had dominated to that point, were taken out by Team Flash from Vietnam. Both the Thai giants fell down in the playoff stages. And then we ended up with Team Flash, who had taken out AHQ, who looked so strong, getting wiped by J-Team in the grand finals. And it didn't even look close.
Right. Over the course of one day, J-Team went from losing 3-0 to Team Flash and being in a position where they had to beat AHQ, the defending international champions. And then they said, you know what, how about we just go 7-0 on the day and just take the international championships for ourselves.
And it was really, we had like a big grand final setup where a Vietnamese lady stood in front of literally space and pretended to be Neil deGrasse Tyson, and then some people came out and sang the theme song to the event, and J-Team did not get the memo. They did not understand it was supposed to be a close, exciting grand finals, and they just walked out and made sure they got the prize.
Wait, wasn't that in Thailand, though?
You're right, but if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, the lady who stood in front of the Starfield was one of the hosts from the Vietnamese event, which the first half of the event did happen in Vietnam.
Right. Anyway, so back when the 2018 AIC happened, I actually made a separate video, like predictions video for Samurai Gamers at the time. And a lot of what I thought would happen happened, except for Vietnam being the surprise kind of winners of the event, right? Because we had 3 teams from Vietnam get out of group stages, or at least out of the first group stages. We had 2 go to the quarterfinals and 1 go to the finals, and that was not something we expected coming in. Obviously, having 3 teams helped. Now, this time, off the backs of that, we'll take that information and see what happens at this upcoming 2019 AWC. So, that leads us into our next part, which is the questions going into the 2019 AWC. And the first thing, the most important question here, is how strong is Vietnam as a region? Obviously, they have 2 teams in this AWC. And going all the way back to the 2018 AWC, they only had 1 team. And even though the reason why I thought that they would be weaker at the 2018 AIC is because of the performance there at the 2018 AWC. I know I'm throwing out acronyms everywhere, but their performance wasn't as bad as we thought because they took games off the top teams, and that was actually better than some of the other wildcard teams from Thailand and Chinese Taipei could have done. And then, obviously, we saw their amazing performance at the 2018 AIC. So that just leads to the question, are they at the same level as Thailand and Chinese Taipei? Or are they a rung below? Maybe, I mean, we've heard things from BMG, or the members of BMG, who think they're actually better than those 2 regions. What do you think?
So I've been doing those interviews, which will be posted in some form. If I can get permission, we'll do them on the main broadcast. If I can't, maybe they'll go up on this channel. That's my favorite kind of plug, where I plug something that might not happen. Nice. But yeah, BMG were telling me that they think they are the best team in the world, and I was kind of taken aback by that. But
the best region in the world. The best region in the world. So the BMG think that Vietnam are the best region in the world. That was how the question was phrased,
but they got real specific that it was Team Flash they were worried about.
Right. Okay.
So I went and watched a whole bunch of the Vietnamese games off the back of that conversation, and I do think I agree. I do think Team Flash are playing really, really, really clean AOV right now, and I think the team that surprised us so much, maybe part of the reason they folded in the finals at the International Championship last year was just stage fright. Maybe they saw the lady with the glowing stars behind her, and they were like, oh god,
oh no,
this is a world final. And that got to them a little bit, because that was that team's first time anywhere close to that level. Their top team coming into this year has already been to one world final and lost. There is nothing that can rattle them anymore. I think this will be a much stronger and steadier performance. In addition, I think that team's grown as a whole. I think Vietnam as a region is much more terrifying than it was even last year at the International Championship, and definitely at last year's World Cup.
Right, and all the questions you put forth are questions I think that apply to Box Gaming, their second team, who was extremely impressive, nearly took out Team Flash, but they have not played on an international stage, but we'll get to that team later on. Now, our second question, what do we make of the hybrid Thai teams? And by hybrid, I mean both of them, they both have 2 Koreans on the roster. Now, though they both have very good Koreans on the roster, members of the 2018 AWC champion Korean roster. We have TDC with Sun and Jajack, and we have AHQ with Rush and Hawk. So how is this going to work? Are the Koreans just going to dominate like they have in the past? We've seen that already in the RPL, that Sun and Jajack just carried everyone on their backs. Not to say that their teammates were like chopped liver, but I don't even know what to make of this. Are they stronger because of the Koreans? Are they weaker because of lack of communication? What's your take on it?
So generally, to answer your last question first, because it's a little bit more specific, generally I'm a believer that international teams can communicate so long as they put the work in ahead of time. Because actual in-game comms, regardless of what language you're speaking, are pretty similar, right? You say, hey, here's who we're focusing, hey, here's what objective we're worried about, hey, here's where we're going. And not much more than that is communicated in-game if your IGN, your in-game leader, is doing a good job. where the hard part is with teams that have mixed language is communicating ahead of time, is making sure that everyone knows what the game plan is going into the game. And that's where teams will fall apart if they have mixed language, mixed culture, they're not all practicing together, stuff like that. But for this side, I don't think that's a problem, actually, for either of these sides, because the Korean players that could be a potential weakness have been living and working in Thailand with the RPL for a whole year at this point. They wouldn't have joined these teams if they thought that was going to be an issue. If I can indulge myself and move more generally, I think everyone should have their eyes on Toyota Diamond Cobra. Because they had their upsets, and it's a J-Jack team. And I was watching a little bit of their games, and I was seeing J-Jack team play. And if there is one team that has carried the spirit of AHQ, the AHQ that won the last World Championship, it's not actually AHQ, in my opinion. It is this TDC roster.
Right, and because TDC does have J-Jack and Sun on their team, and Sun can be a team in and of himself, right? He just pulls the entire gravity of the field toward him, 5 people chasing him, and he's like, you know what, I'm fine, I can take you guys on, or I can just run away.
He is my favorite split lane player in the world.
Also because he's so bubbly, right?
He is also adorable.
Okay, Sun has 2 modes. He is just serial killer mode, or he is just bubbly mode, right? Either he's just smiling at the camera, or he's completely dead serious and it's time to win another world championship. One last thing.
What you're trying to say is that Sun is an anime waifu.
Something like that. He also looks exactly like the newest character who's going to come, whose name I actually don't know right now. But last thing I will say about the Thai teams is that we talked about communication, and you said about preparation coming into the tournament. I think that actually could be a problem for AHQ, and in particular when they're drafting, because again, this is global band pick, which means that you can't pick the same heroes before, and they have a Taiwanese coach, or a coach from Chinese Taipei, and then they have half Korean and half Thai roster. So are they speaking English? Are they also still have the old Korean Chinese translator that they had when they were on the GCS? So now they have just 3 languages going back and forth, and like, who's talking to who? I have no idea what's happening. I don't even know how they handle that.
Slowly. Which, as you say, may be a problem if you're in a fast-paced draft phase.
Right. Okay, that brings us to our next question, which is China even in the mix of contenders for this tournament? In the 2018 AWC, they were one of the top teams. They ended up finishing 4th, which at the time was a surprise that they had fallen off a little bit, because they were at the 2017 AIC, if you want to go all the way back then when not everyone was involved. Then in the 2018 AIC, they sent Oh My God, and they got knocked out in one of the most bizarre sequences where they had to like play against the clock because of this weird tiebreaker system. But this time, they're not even sending their 2nd tier teams, which they've done in the past. They're sending like a 3rd or 4th tier team, a team that didn't even qualify for the qualifiers for the KPL. So are we just going to see China fall out of it altogether, or do they have a chance to actually prove themselves as one of the top regions, even though they sent maybe not a great team?
So, perennially, yes, because the Chinese teams always have a built-in disadvantage of playing a different game. And they get handed AOV for maybe the first time in their lives, and they're playing a different edition of this MOBA that they've already been professional at, and you always see that kind of affect them. Their character pools are bizarre, a little bit narrower than you expect, and their strategies don't quite work. Especially with pick ban, the new pick ban system that they're implementing, the limited and weird character pools are going to be a problem, I think, especially. But, well, we wrap it back around to positive, TJ, they're always good despite it.
Yeah.
Because the honest answer is that the Chinese system, the qualifiers for the developmental league of the KPL, spits out teams that have played more competitive matches than almost any other region in the world. The KPL is one of the biggest esports leagues in the world, so a team that's even close to getting into the KPL is a damn good team. The fact that we're getting a team that didn't qualify for the developmental league of the KPL definitely means that they're a step below any of the previous rosters, so I wouldn't expect them to perform as well, but I would also say that you can't count them out. They're going to be a true wild card at the World Cup.
Right, and they've been wild cards every single time. When we get to the rankings later, I do
It's
have
a mystery box.
Yeah, when we do get to the rankings later, I have them significantly lower than I normally did, though. Obviously, there is room for crazy surprises from them, but we'll have to see. One thing I want to mention, as I was looking through the teams, putting together notes for them, I was trying to figure out who played which hero, right? And I'm like, oh, that's Raz. Okay, that's that's Malog. And I'm like, that's definitely Dioma. I'm like, but why does he have this extra dash? And it's one of those things where, like, wait,
they can recast. So I've been learning King of Glory recently.
Yeah.
Their Ryoma has a recast on his pinwheel.
Oh. Interesting. So I actually was correct that it was Dioma with an extra dash, which is like insane because if he tries to play Dioma, he's gonna be like, wait, where's my reset?
Do you want the honest answer? Every KOG character is either slightly cooler or slightly hotter than their AOV equivalent. All of our versions of the characters are significantly less attractive.
The only thing I think of when you say that is the fact that Raz in King of Glory is Mai from King of Fighters, which is like one of the original waifus. With her her assets. She has many assets, let's just say.
All right, Daniel. I just want to talk about all the cool Chinese history boys that are in King of Glory. Because if you ever wanted to sexualize an ancient Chinese emperor, by God, do I have a game for you.
Oh, goodness. We can only sexualize Gina for now.
King of Glory in Chinese app stores now. I get paid for that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, moving on. All right, so my next question is, can North America or Indonesia make it to the semifinals? So both regions are sending their best team by far, in our opinions. North America, they're sending BMG, who completely dominated not only the North American region, but the other two Western regions as well. Whereas Indonesia, EVOS, they have won 3 championships in a row in Indonesia, and one which was the Clash of Nations, in which they defeated DTwo, who was the second. DTwo was 1 match away from qualifying for the AWC. They narrowly lost to AHQ. So Indonesia has actually beaten one of the top Thai teams, and they really could make a splash. The problem is the format of the groups. They need to either upset someone in the groups or upset someone in the quarterfinals, or both.
So, Indonesia are in the group of death, so no.
Wait, but that makes it easier in a way, because if they get 4th, all they have to do is beat a wildcard team in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, but they're not. They're in the group of death.
But the group of death only has 3 great teams. They can get the 4th slot.
You know what? We can disagree here. You can have more faith in Indonesia than I do. I know you've followed their exploits much more than I have, but I cared about the Indonesian team at the last AWC, and I was burned. They bombed out when I needed them most. When the North American team needed them to take a map most, they did not.
Good.
Which means that I don't have faith in them here, because I think
they betrayed NA.
Well, yes, but I also think if nothing else, they'll encounter the same problems that teams historically have when they're from breakout regions. These players previously didn't get out of groups. That means there's still very much real stage fright at play. I think the odds of them getting all the way to the semifinals are low. North America, I have more faith in than any previous North American roster, which actually, there was only really one previous North American roster, but I loved them dearly, so we'll brush over that. I think this is the best North American roster that we've ever sent. I think this is the best Western roster we've ever sent by as much as 2 times. Put a 2x multiplier on anything we've sent previously, and that's about how good they are. And those previous rosters did get to quarterfinals, did get out of groups consistently. I would also say, if I were trying to rig the AWC to produce the best group stage draw for North America, this is how I would have done it.
Right.
I don't think they could have gotten a better group.
That's true, but even if they get out of the group and say second place, which would involve upsetting quote-unquote 2 teams, you can say if it's an upset or not, but if they even get second place, they still have to beat a non-wild card team from Vietnam, Thailand, or Chinese Taipei, which is nuts. I think being in the not group of death might actually hurt them in the end. I think having more of a mixture of teams, am I just putting water on you?
This is your version of the podcast. Can I swear on this version of the podcast?
Sure.
Bitch, they are the wild card. This is a North American team that I don't think anyone really has a ton of things to expect from in the Asian community, and they also don't have the knowledge of what the NA team has been working on because they've kind of been in their own incubator. So I think if any team is going to start pulling out upsets, it is this North American side.
Right. Yeah, I can totally see that happening, especially because, I mean, I'm not great at translating Chinese stuff, but I think in the promotional video or when they were talking about NA, I think they mentioned something about having a week late game, which was weird. Oh, but anyway, they might be underestimating. You might be right, and they might get upset. Let's move on to our final question, which is, after Mad Team, which is, by the way, the defending champion J-Team roster, after they demolished everyone at the end of the 2018 AIC, the question is up there in the air. Who are you taking, Mad Team or the rest of the field put together?
So, legitimately difficult. Which should tell you something in and of itself. But I do think the fact that they are the world champions typically counts against you. Not just in esports, but across anything. It's very rare to see repeat world championships just because everyone has their eyes on you. And also, once again, if I was trying to rig the groups, I would have done it this way. They're in the group of death. They have every other good team to beat. That's going to go one of 2 ways. Either it's going to be sick warm-up for the grand finals lads, or they're going to get worn out, burnt up, and figured out early.
Right. I think that the difference between this version of the world champions and the AHQ team that were the reigning world champions going into the 18 AIC is that AHQ, they were up and down after their championship, and even in their championship performance, they were kind of like, they edged out in the finals. They had issues the entire time. Like, it felt like they turned it on when they needed to most. And that meant like on a game-by-game basis, right? And they just had this championship medal. And even in the following GCS, they had to come from 3rd place and win that tournament. And basically, they turned on again in the playoffs. Whereas Mad Team, they've been dominant for the entire stretch, going from back into the 2018 AIC, all throughout the GCS regular season, and then in the GCS finals where there are the GCS playoffs where they crapped all over one team, and then in the finals, their rivals TXO, they 4-0'd them. So they are as unstoppable, as juggernaut-ish as a team can possibly be coming in to this tournament. And if I had to take,
I've learned.
Go ahead.
I've learned not to value pre-tournament form. Because if anything, that just paints a bigger target on their backs. It's like scrims. You always hear people, if you ever hear a team say, yeah, we've been doing really well in scrims, I instantly go, oh, they're going to get burned.
Yeah, there is a difference between scrims though and the actual tournaments that where your life is on the line, and if you don't win, you're not gonna go. So
But the reason teams that do really, quote unquote, do really well in scrims get blown up so consistently is because all the other teams have figured them out. That's why they're doing so well in scrims, because all the other teams have worked out what they're doing and are working up counter strats. Now, like you say, actual tournament play is different. Nobody's giving them free wins in tournament play. Although I've seen some of those games, I'm just saying. The difference is, or the similarity is that the other teams have seen the best Mad Team has to offer consistently. And Mad Team are still doing the same thing. And if they come into this tournament and play their best game, people have already seen it. They've already counter-stratted against it. And because Mad Team have been so busy defending their title for the last year, they actually have already shown it all, I think. I don't think they're going to be pulling out any mad new strats, if you'll pardon the pun. I think they are relying right now on their execution of their existing play style, and I think a team that has come into this tournament prepped for that has a decent chance of being able to take them down a peg. My number one favorite to do that, the number one team I think could rattle them in the group stage, is TDC.
All right. Well, seems like you have the field, and I'm gonna go with the Juggernaut. Doesn't matter if the teams can. Doesn't matter how much they see Mad Team. In my opinion, they're just gonna do the same thing, and it's gonna be the same result. That brings us to those teams. And I have ranked them for your convenience. This is my terrible opinion coming into you on your screen / in your ears. And we are starting with tier 4, because I love putting in things in tier lists, right, TJ? So our first tier...
You're a big tier list guy.
Exactly. Our first tier is group stage fodder. And we're starting off with the number 12, Malaysia, or M8 Hexa, number 11, China, or Xman, number 10, Japan, or Blizzard, and number 9, Korea, or NewB. Interesting thing to mention here is that M8 Hexa, the Malaysian team, has 2 Taiwanese players on the roster. Japan has 2 Vietnamese players on the roster. So let's start with Malaysia. It's the first Malaysian team in an international competition. Last 2 were headlined by Tamago from Singapore, even though... And part of that was because at the 2018 AWC, the Tamago was replacing Clutch Guild from Philippines. Anyways, this is the first time we see Malaysia. They barely made it out of their qualifiers. And even though I like to see a team dominate the region, is what I'm trying to say, if they're going to be able to make any waves happen in the actual international matches. You have anything to add? You'd agree with 12?
I've watched some of the Valor Cup tournaments in the past, and the core of this roster has always looked good to me. Yeah. I actually remember some of these players sticking out, even in previous Valor Cups. As you say, we've yet to see an MSP team impress on the world stage, but who knows? Maybe they have. Maybe they are that first team.
Yeah, Ray, their support was
number 12.
Ray, their support was previously in the GCS, but he was on Samsung Taiwan Esports. Anyway,
maybe we're skipping ahead here, and you can fill me in on this. But why have you put Japan ahead of them? Because surely Malaysia has had more time. To
the short
play
answer.
AOV.
The short answer is I'm a massive homer, and we'll get to my actual logical thinkings in a second. But
all right, I'll hold that point. I put a pin in it, and it's right here waiting for us to get to Blizzard.
Nice. Okay, so 11, China, Xman. We talked about them a little bit before. We actually talked about them quite a bit. This is like their 3rd or 4th tier of team. They're kind of 2nd to 3rd tier of team-ish in the last international event. They didn't get out of the 2nd group stage, even though that was a weird way to go out, right, with the tiebreaker and the weird timing and everything.
So basically there are 2 tiers of professional play in the KPL. There is the big boy KPL, there is the developmental league, where teams like OMG still pay their players at the top level living salaries to play. And then there's the tier below that, which is amateur play. And that's where this team is being drawn from. Right. So they are not full-time King of Glory players.
The one thing you can say for them, well, other than the fact that they're from China, maybe China's just better than everyone else, is that they did crush the qualifiers. They went, I think, 2-0, 3-0, and 3-0. So, I mean, they're the best in the qualifier at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
But that was KOG also.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Again, China could move. China could be really good, but... Sorry?
Ow! No, sorry, I just stood on a pin. What's this? Oh, there's a note here.
Okay.
It says, "Why do you like Blizzard so much?"
Well, so much is a little bit of an over... I couldn't be so much of a homer that I could put them past Korea. I still have behind Korea, but the reason why is because this is...
Oh my god. I just clicked on your notes. He has like 3 paragraphs maximum for every other team. He has written a small essay on Team Blizzard.
Okay. The reason why is because the analyst desk for the Japan qualifier are 2 of my former colleagues at Samurai Gamers, and they just I'm like, can you tell me stuff about the Japanese team? And they're like, sure, and they just filled an entire page from both of them. So I'm like, okay, that works, I guess. So
you sure have a dissertation. All right, tell me why they're good.
Okay, so first of all, they have 2 of the top Vietnamese players in Sota and Kirito. Mm-hmm. And also, the Japanese players are very much professional, not professional as in terms of actually making money to play games, but they have lots of experience in other MOBAs. Mai is a great leader, and Slash Moon and DTwo, they're twins. They have twin synergy. I mean, come on.
I'm not gonna. Okay, you're sounding a little bit desperate.
Okay, they just from what I've heard about them. And I looked at Mai's Twitter the other day, they seem very professional. They've been practicing on Taiwan. They've been practicing with all the new heroes because they obviously don't have those heroes in Japan. I think they're just a very professional team. Not in their attitude, right? Which is not. You can't always say that about other people.
Let me tell you about the European team or the South American team at the AWC 2018. Because both those teams tried real hard. Both those teams had real good support structures with coaches that came wearing suits. They printed out their own memes to wave on the desk. They were actually real good players, trying real hard, and both of them got blown up. And I think that situation of being brand new to the game and despite everything you put in just being inexperienced is much more relevant to this team than anyone else here. I think I put them as the number 12. I think it is only realistic to say that on Japan's first global outing, they will be the worst team in the world.
Yeah, makes sense. Especially when we saw India in the past AIC. They definitely seem like the worst team. But we will find out because Japan and Malaysia are actually in the same...
Oh my god, his name's Kirito?
Yeah, it's the Vietnamese guy on their team.
Oh, okay. All right. That's all right. Sure.
Is that I don't even is that an anime reference? I wouldn't even know.
Oh, okay. All right. Wow, me knowing more about anime than you. This has never happened before. That's truly one of the worst pieces of television or mass-produced media I've ever been exposed to. It's called Sword Art Online.
Oh, I've heard that.
It was real popular when maybe 3 years ago, and it was my first exposure to anime and possibly why I harbor a deep resentment for media. The protagonist from that is called Kirito.
Oh, okay. Well, we can rest assured that
this boy is definitely a fan, but if he's Vietnamese, then I'll forgive him. He's at least not from the nation that produced such an atrocity.
Okay. Anyway. You're going to have fun with that, casting his name.
Oh, 100%. I'm going to go rewatch it so I can make good references. Actually, wait, you need me alive for this event, don't you?
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'd better not.
Okay, that brings us to our last team, which is NewB from Korea. And they're just a complete question mark. They did go undefeated in games in the qualifier 2-0, 2-0, 3-0. This is the first time we're seeing any Korean roster other than the AHQ roster. So it's really impossible to tell. Korea seems to be more into KOG these days than AOV. I don't even know what the state of their server really is, to be honest. So this is all up in the air, but you got to give them some benefit of the doubt, just because Korea has always been good at esports, and they crushed the qualifiers.
So the Korea effect, which is that it's real hard to name an esport Korea isn't dominant at. Two, the King of Glory KPL Pro League has been expanded to Korea, and that's like a full force expansion. So even if Arena of Valor isn't currently the most popularist thing in the universe right now, there are players that are playing to be involved at a professional level in KOG, and if that transfers over for the Chinese teams, it sure transfers over for the Korean teams as well. So I have these boys as a dark horse. I think I'd actually put them ranking higher than you would on your AWC rankings. I don't think they're group stage fodder. I think they're a dark horse.
Really? Anyway, that does bring us to our next grouping, our next tier, as you will, which is the dark horses. And so would you have them above Indonesia, or you would just have them in this grouping?
Yeah, so for anyone who's newer to esports and unfamiliar with the phrase dark horse, basically what that means is we don't know for sure that they are going to be a relevant team. But if there is a team that's going to come out and surprise us, if there is a team that's going to be able to step up, it comes from this grouping. And I think that they are... you know what? I'd go so far as to say I think they're more likely than Indonesia to surprise us. Yes.
Just because of the unknown factor?
Because we know that there is high-level mobile MOBA competition ongoing in Korea, and the last team that Korea produced on short notice won the World Cup.
Right. Well, I guess I should say the actual rankings for people who are listening to the podcast and don't have a visual. The number 8 team I have on my list is Indonesia, or EVOS. The number 7 team, North America, or BMG. The number 6 team, the Chinese Taipei wildcard, which is one team. The number 5, Vietnam wildcard, which is Box Gaming. And number 4, the Thailand wildcard, which is AHQ. So, you would have Korea over Indonesia. I think that... I think that I can see where you're coming from, because Indonesia has consistently been below. Like, they're more of a known lesser quantity, as it were. But this is by far, as I mentioned before, the best Indonesia team so far. And let me just talk about EVOS Esports, which is going to be representing Indonesia this time. They qualified by winning the ASL Season 2, which was this bizarre tournament that actually started before the AIC and then kind of went on and on and on. But they consolidated that victory by winning the ESL Indonesia Championship Season 1, and then that allowed them to qualify for the ESL Clash of Nations, and they won that as well. And I think the most impressive part of those 3 championships was defeating DTwo, which is a Thai team, in the finals. And like I mentioned before, DTwo was 1 series away from qualifying for the AWC. They actually defeated... I'm speaking of DTwo right now. DTwo actually defeated AHQ in the winners finals of the qualifier, only to lose to AHQ in the grand finals. So a team that beat AHQ was defeated by EVOS. If that makes any sense.
All right. Look, you've been an esports caster for a long time. This team beat that team who beat this team, and therefore this team will beat this team. That doesn't work. And sure, if we're giving prizes for highest quantity of tournaments won, Evo sure have won a lot of tournaments. If we're giving prizes for longest tournament, congratulations, Evo's also won the longest tournament. But I have yet to see anything from these players, because several of them did play at the AIC. They didn't look good. I didn't enjoy watching Y-Force and Where I play. I felt that they were making silly mistakes that no top team would make. And if they're back to do it again, I think they need to have made significant improvements. Now, as you say, They have had a lot of game time between last year's AIC and this year's World Cup. Maybe they'll come out of the gate and blow my mind. I haven't seen any of their play recently.
All right. Well, that brings me to my number 17, and I have North America here. This is just based on history. I could be, if I were super optimistic, I think that BMG's range, or North America's range, is pretty wild here. You couldn't convince me to go have them as high as 5, but as far as like average results,
they're not a dark horse, Daniel. They're a dark stallion.
I was gonna make the joke earlier that dark horses, when you were giving the definition, I'm like, this is not Katy Perry's dark horse.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's not a joke that I get, but I appreciate that you're making it.
Yeah, she made a song called Dark Horse, and it's like, that's not a dark horse. What are you talking about? Anyway, sorry. Moving on. Most people listening to this podcast.
Right. No. North America are going to come in like a wrecking ball.
Okay.
This is going to be one of the best Western rosters ever fielded in AOV, and I think they can come out strong here.
Yeah, I absolutely think they can do very well. The logistics of how they're going to get to the semifinals, which would be an improvement over their last result. If they just get the quarterfinals, it's the same thing, right? So we'll talk about logistics later. But, when you're comparing them to the rest of the teams on this list, right? You're comparing them to one team, comparing to Box Gaming, comparing to AHQ. I mean, just go ahead, go.
I do think I value them more highly than you do. You have them below wildcards from Chinese Taipei and Vietnam. That's 1 and Box, respectively. I put them on par with AHQ, in my mind. And that might sound insane, but keep in mind, this is not the AHQ that won the World Cup. This is the AHQ that is a limping, if very strong, Thai team. And I think North America is absolutely on par with the second best Thai team.
Yep. Well, in order to make those comparisons, let's talk about these next upcoming teams. I think, is there anything we need to say about BMG to, tell our audience about them?
They've got Zane, and he doesn't know how old he is, but he sure does know how to press buttons good.
Yeah, I think, honestly, this roster is as dedicated and talented as we've seen from the North American roster.
I will go out there and say, in the past, teams led by KZ Fox, who previously, of course, came in second in the Valor series as Tribe Gaming. In the past, those teams have suffered from tilt and stage fright. I don't think they handle pressure very well. Historically, I don't think KZ Fox as a leader handles pressure very well historically. But I've chatted with KZ Fox, and it seems like they've shifted the leadership to, they describe it as a democratic style, where they all work out and agree what's going to happen. And I think that means that, well, it could go one of two ways. Either they won't be able to make decisions on the world stage, or they will not be vulnerable to a single person freezing up.
Right.
This team also has the benefit of a lot of experience, but I think if this goes real bad for NA, it's because they freeze up on the world stage.
I think that's actually one of their strengths, though. I think this is the most confident team we've ever had from North America.
They were just as confident when they got knocked out in the finals of the Valor series last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's my problem, because this Tribe Gaming roster, which BMG is an evolution of, was real confident previously when they didn't win North America. Right. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in how confident Beginnings is, because that boy will always tell me he's about to 3-0 the field.
Well, it's better than being unconfident. Well, I mentioned earlier, let's move on. Like I mentioned earlier, in order to talk about how North America will do, we need to talk about who they need to beat. And starting off with my number 6 team, Chinese Taipei's wildcard, which is one team. Now, the story of one team is actually a story more of how Tongxing fell apart during the GCS. Basically, one team has been a middling team in the GCS for a while. They kind of moved up to that 3 spot this past GCS season just because of teams leaving and disbanding and changing and stuff like that. And the hierarchy just stood the entire time throughout the GCS playoffs and everything. And it seemed like there was a hierarchy of Mad Team number 1 / 1A, Tongxing 1B, and then one team was 3, and then Nova Monster Jewel was 4. And that was the order, right? And then Tongxing got humiliated by Mad Team, and that carried over to the qualifier for the wild card, and one team was able to just take advantage of a flurry of missteps and mistakes from Tongxing to qualify for the AWC. Now, they did their job, right? They took advantage of those mistakes, which is, admirable, but I feel like their qualification has more to do with Tongxing screwing up than it does one team being actually better or worthy of the second best team in Chinese Taipei.
And that is why I rate the North American team better than them. But I will also say in their favor, Shanyo and Hualin, who are kind of the experienced core of this team, have been on the world stage before, and they have looked real good on the world stage before. So if those two show up, I'm not convinced it matters what anyone else in the game is doing on either team.
Right. One person I would say makes a slight difference is Fanta, the support, because Fanta, if their team is following him, he looks like a genius. If they're not following him, then he kind of just goes off and suicides. So that can be...
Welcome to playing supports. You're either the smartest person on the team and the team leader, or you're not either.
Right. I do agree with you that Hualin, if he pulls out all the stops, then they could be extremely tough to elevate.
Wake up in the middle of the night in panic, thinking that I'm watching Shanyo's Lindis bend the North American team to his will. Last day I see. Because that was devastating to watch. So if he gets his good jungle picks and Hualin's carrying from mid, like I said, I'm not convinced that anyone else gets a say from either team who wins. But they haven't really been able to consistently deliver that, like you were talking about, and this team does not look like the strongest team in the world. So, I think in terms of consistency, North America have a step ahead of the Chinese Taipei wildcard side.
That brings us to my number 5 team, which is the Vietnam wildcard team, which is Box Gaming. And here's where we bust out the Warriors blew a 3-1 lead in the finals memes because, and if you don't know basketball, I'm sorry. Because, well, you live in San Francisco.
That's the one with the hoops, right?
Anyway, Box Gaming in the finals.
I actually knew the Golden State Warriors lost the finals live because a collective sigh of disappointment traveled across the city of San Francisco and the surrounding areas. And I, heard it. I kid you not. I, heard everyone around me go, God! And, hit something. And I was like, what? Oh, basketball. Right.
Anyway. So, Box Gaming in the AOG finals, which is Vietnam's league, they held a 3-1 lead over Flash, and they proceeded to choke it. And you could say that's Flash having the heart of a champion. You could say Box, maybe it was just a good sign, the fact that they got 3 games off of Flash in the first place. I'm not really sure because Box hasn't been on the international stage before, so this is all new to them.
Yeah. I think that's why I have the most questions, because I don't recognize any of these players.
Yeah.
And as I've been saying repeatedly throughout today, over the past 2 years of casting esports, and especially AOV esports, I've learned to recognize the value of stage experience. Because so many of the players in AOV esports in particular have not played in any esport prior, and that means they can't hold it on a big stage.
Well, they did play on a literal big stage because they busted all the stops for the AOG finals when I was watching. That was really cool to see that all go down. And they beat
Sure.
Swing Phantom. They beat Swing Phantom, who were
But-
previously at the AAC, and they beat Adonis as well. So that's something.
But it's all escalation from there. You thought the AOG finals were flashy. Welcome to the AWC.
Last thing is that they will be on home soil. So will that bring more pressure, or will they be buoyed by the
I
crowd?
think it helped Flash last. I think Flash looked much better because they had the Vietnamese crowd behind them.
So we'll see if their inexperience or the home crowd helps them more. That brings us to our fourth team and the top dark horse. That is Thailand's wildcard, which is AHQ. And we mentioned this before. They have a hybrid roster. They have, in my opinion, maybe the most talented roster in the entire AWC, because every single person on their list, you could say that's one of the top, other than maybe Tao's, that's one of the top players at their position. KSSA, one of the top supports. NT, even though he moved from mid over to the Abyssal lane, he was amazing, especially Natalia when he's playing mid. Hawk, he was part of, world champion. Same thing with Rush, and Tao's is just pretty solid himself. So the roster in and of itself is just terrifying, but they took a long time to get it going, and they finally put it together at the very end of the RPL. And was able to sneak into the playoffs, and then from there they were able to win the Thailand qualifier, the road to AWC.
I think in this team's rush to put together an all-star roster, they may have ended up with one that can't harken on the world stage. Because when it comes time for all of these players to play as a 5-man unit, it feels like they end up KSSAing their team play away and having to end the game with an NT as they fall just short.
I'm waiting for you to...
I didn't have anything for Taos.
I was going to say, like, Taos.
There's no way to make that happen. So yeah, basically, like you said, this is the most individually talented AOV team that I think has ever been fielded, except possibly for the first AHQ roster. Although that roster was incredibly individually talented at a time where nobody else had quite figured out the game yet. So this is the most individually talented roster that has ever been fielded to date. However, they do not impress me with their team play. And they do not strike me as a team that can hold together against teams that are as talented as them and a better team play. The games I saw them win when I was watching them smash the kids in the RPL road to AWC qualifier were teams that
Literal
they were
kids.
Better individually than.
Literal kids.
They were just outskilling.
Because DTwo has a bunch of kids on their roster.
I know, and I felt real bad for them, because it wasn't that DTwo were doing anything wrong, it was just that they were going for 2v1s and losing them, because they were 2v1s against the AHQ players. And if you're at a stage where the people you're playing will win 2v1s against you, not even 1v1s, but 2v1s, then I think AHQ no longer are I think they take a massive power dip the second people can hold their own in 1v1s.
Right. The one thing we can say for them, though, is they finally figured out that maybe putting their best players all in the same game, all in the starting lineup, is a good idea. Because for a while, they could not figure that out. They had Rush and Hawk in there, and they were losing in the RPL in the regular season, and they're like, Hawk, you're not cutting it. And they put NT in the mid, because NT plays mid. It's like, how about you just put both in the lineup? Maybe that'll work.
Wild.
Playing your best players.
Solve the world peace, I'm not going to lie to you.
Playing your best players. It's a novel strategy. Anyway, that brings us to what I will call the contenders. And we have number 3, Vietnam, which is Team Flash, and number 2, Thailand, which is Toyota Diamond Cobra. Take it away with Team Flash, TJ.
But are they contenders or are they pretenders? Team Flash will need to prove that they are the former, and there are some question marks around them, because this is a team that looked real good, but it was a surprise. I didn't expect them to reach the finals last year. They barely scraped out of groups. the fact that they looked real good till they got to finals was immediately undermined by the fact that they got smashed in the finals, run over. So there's a question in the air. Now, home crowd all the way through this time, definitely in their favor. And the fact that they are now experienced on the world stage, definitely in their favor. I think overall, I feel real good about Team Flash. I wouldn't say that I favor them to win it, but I definitely think they're up there.
What do you think about their championship fortitude? Because they lost to J-Team when J-Team had a day to game plan for them, rather than only game planning for, AHQ, who they thought they were going to play. But they did come back from down 3-1 against Box Gaming. But was that just them not... maybe the opposite, right? Maybe they were choking in the beginning, they put it together in the end. What do you think about that?
I think once you lose a world final, there's very little that can rattle you. Because you know what that feels like. And worst case, it happens again, but it's tangible.
Right.
Whereas when you're there for the first time and you're like, oh my god, it's finally over, we're going to lose everything, then your team breaks. And we could see that. I was casting it with Envirum, and we were watching the feed from the AIC, and the looks on the faces of those players when they realized they were losing that series were like heartbreaking. I wanted to fly over and give them hugs because they looked absolutely shattered. And I do honestly think that's what lost them the World Final last time, and I do honestly think it won't happen again.
All right, that brings us to the team which I have in second place, which is Thailand's Toyota Diamond Cobra. So, Toyota Diamond Cobra...
You have to make a vroom vroom sound effect when you say their name.
No, well, Toyotas are very quiet, so it's just going to be...
And then a hiss afterwards. Vroom vroom, hiss.
Oh, God. Toyota have very quiet endings.
Slogan.
Okay. Anyway, so...
You have to say it quietly. That's why the hiss is the same volume.
Vroom vroom. Okay. What's the diamond sound? Like shine, bring, vroom vroom, bling.
Diamonds do not make sounds unless you drop them.
Oh.
Anyway.
Let me just talk about their road to this point, because that kind of tells you where they are as a team and how strong they are. They were decent in the RPL. They weren't struggling like AHQ. They were in the playoff picture the entire time. They finished tied in the regular season with Bazaar Gaming, who were the previous defending champions. And then when it came to the RPL playoffs, things were going as you would expect. They narrowly lost to Bazaar. They fell down to the lower bracket, and then they beat AHQ, which at the time was expected. And then Bazaar narrowly beat Buriram, who up until that point was the juggernauts of the RPL. And Buriram made a couple of weird mistakes to barely lose that. There were they basically
bizarre mistakes.
Yeah, quiet. They that wasn't intended. I swear. Honestly, they lost 4-3, or was it 3-2? But it should have been 5-1 or 6-1, because they were ahead in almost every single game except for one against Bazaar Gaming, and they choked so many away. And then that must have gotten to their heads, because when they went to the lower bracket, they got crushed by TDC 3-0. And then TDC said, "Oh wait, we're actually good at this game." And then they decided to they went on to 4-1 Bazaar in the finals. And then all of a sudden they looked like in the old AHQ roster. They looked like one of the most solid teams in the world. J-Jock turned it on, like you mentioned earlier, TJ, and Sun was just doing Sun things, and then it almost didn't matter who was around them, and having even solid players around them was by far enough to easily take the RPL.
So J-Jock is calling for this team, right?
I mean, I assume so, but...
Because I watched their gameplay, and I would be astonished if he wasn't their team captain, because it just looked like the AHQ team of old. It just looked that coordinated, it looked that synced, and that prepped. One of the things J-Jack's teams have always been really good at is the amount of prep work they put in. I love to tell the story of AHQ in the hotel lobby working things out on a whiteboard at 3 a.m. the day before the quarterfinals at the AWC 2018. And I have to believe that J-Jack hasn't chilled because the man doesn't. So I think this is as close as you get to a 50-50 between them and Man2.
Oh, so you think they should be in the favorites column?
Yeah. I think they're a 50-50. I honestly do.
All right, well, that brings us to our favorites, and I have one team in there. TJ has two. I have Chinese Taipei, which is Mad Team, who are the defending international champions. This is the J Team roster, and they're so good they even have like really competent subs. Like Ohm and Xinyi, who are their subs, could easily be on one of the wildcard teams and be one of the top teams as well. So they have a lot going for them, other than even just the fact that they've been dominant so far in their last 4 playoff series, including the GCS and the AIC 2018. They are 14-0 in games, TJ, and have been absolutely dominant.
I watched some of those GCS games, and you ever seen someone do a wheelie before, but they're like real confident in their ability to do a wheelie, and they're just doing it to impress the girl they brought to the event, you know? And they're like, oh sure, man, this is going to get me laid. That's what they were doing in the finals of the GCS. A sick wheelie.
And the funny thing is they were just expecting it. They're like, oh yeah, I mean TXO, they thought they deserved to
That's
be here,
exactly what I mean. They were doing it and they looked so confident and comfortable.
It's like, yeah.
Like it wasn't even a big deal to them. They'd done that wheelie 1,000 times before.
And the funny thing is that the opposing team, Tongxing, who was formerly SMG, they're managed by this very popular Taiwanese band. And during the commercials of the GCS, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a concert with this guy who's the head of TXO." And then Mad Team's just like, "Okay, well, we're just gonna take the championship though, if that's okay with you."
You can go to your concert. We're gonna take the ticket to the AWC.
So, yeah. Individually speaking,
banned from those concerts, or do you think they can go?
you beat us.
I just wouldn't go on a matter of principle, but I wonder if they could.
I think they've been so good too that I used to think that they were just this cohesive team that didn't really have stars, but suddenly, you start to
disagree.
Feel the stars on their team, particularly Neil, who I think might be the best jungler in the world. At least the best jungler in the AWC.
Neil is an incredible jungler. But also, can we talk about my boy Benny?
I knew you were going to say Benny.
And I know that you know that I really like my support players.
Yeah.
But I really, really like Benny. Because he just does stuff in a support role that nobody else would even think to do. I remember watching him play Ybeneth for the first time and having my mind expanded as to how you can play Ybeneth. And a year later, everyone plays Ybeneth the way Benny does.
When they play Ybeneth, because he doesn't really get played anymore. But yeah.
Fair enough. Well, he will at this tournament.
Eventually, in like Game 6, when there's no one left.
I love that you think Mad Team are going to go to a Game 6. This is...
You're the one who brought... Anyway.
This is an incredible... I don't need to hold a position. This is an incredible team, and I would be real scared of them if I were anyone else. Like I said, I think Toyota Diamond Cobra hold a candle to them, but only because they have J-Jack that incredible amount of prep, and they'll get to play them during groups. The groups will be a great litmus test for how the event is going to go, because Man Team is in the group with everyone they need to beat.
Well, that brings us... Sorry, go ahead.
If they just hit this group that you can see on screen right now, if you're watching the video version, and they eat it for breakfast, like Frosted Flakes, then the event is over. But if they struggle early on, if TDC or Team Flash take a game off them during groups, then this could get dicey. But it will really come down to that.
By game, you mean series, right?
No.
Oh, you mean one game?
I just want someone to show to me that they are mortal.
Oh, okay. Well,
like you said, they have not dropped a game in any of their playoff matches recently. They didn't drop a game in the AIC Grand Final.
Right.
If anyone can take a game off them, I'm happy.
I think people will. I mean, considering they're going against TDC and Team Flash, I think that games will be taken off of them. But like you mentioned, we are now looking at the groups. And if you are listening to the podcast, here are the groups. I'm going to say the numbers, and the numbers are the rankings that I just mentioned as we went through those rankings. So Group A is number 4, Thailand wildcard, number 5, Vietnam wildcard, number 6, Chinese Taipei wildcard, number 7, North America, number 10, Japan, number 12, Malaysia. And Group B is number 1, Chinese Taipei, number 2, Thailand, number 3, Vietnam, number 8, Indonesia, number 9, Korea, and number 11, China. And as you can tell from those numbers, one of them has a lot lower numbers than the other one.
I did say I rigged the tournament draft, didn't I? It is like absurd how good a Group A is in comparison to Group B.
And even if we use your rankings, it's still Group B would be 1, 2, 3, 9, 8, 9, because Korea would be 8, right? So 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 11. Mm-hmm. And then it would be 4, 5, 6, 7. It would be the exact same thing, except maybe Japan would be 12 and Malaysia would be 11. So basically, Group A would be even lower. I rate
China more highly than you do.
Right. So Group A would be even easier then, basically. Group B even more of a team of death if you use TJ's rankings. And when you look at these...
I will say, I think Group B, we already know which 3 teams are getting out of it.
The top 3.
Yeah. Group A is a little bit dicier, but like Group B, I think the only hope is that China, Korea, or Indonesia are so much better than we thought they were, because they have to beat TDC or Team Flash, and convincingly.
Or Mad
Team. If they can't do that, they don't have a hope against Mad Team.
So I would say, even though Group B is the team of death for the top side, I think it's also the more contested group for the 4th slot, right? Because you were saying you had China higher, you were saying you had Korea higher, Indonesia, even though, like I've mentioned, they're the best team from Indonesia so far, if like you say, Korea and China are better than we think they are, or think that they have, I can't English. The point is, it's tough. There's a lot of competition there for the 4th slot between those 3 teams. Whereas in Group A, it would be extremely surprising to see Japan or Malaysia defeat any of the top 4.
Yeah, unless Blizzard are secretly the protagonists of the sports anime we didn't realize we were in. There will be no upsets in Group A, in my opinion. Maybe North America gets a game or 2 off somebody we didn't expect them to. I think that's the most likely thing to happen. But otherwise...
But you said they were going to be higher, though. You said they're going to be...
Yes.
They deserve to be number 6.
Yeah, I think they'll come out 3rd in the group, in my opinion. It's possible that they get a game and place even higher than that by beating someone I don't expect them to. But I think NA will come out 3rd in the group, and we'll see what happens from there.
The thing is, I mean, I have them 4 through 7 for a reason, right? I think that if BMG can beat one team, then they can beat Box and they can beat AHQ, right? I think they're very close, and I think that North America, their goal is actually to get first in this group. Because if they don't get first, then they have to play the main versions of those regions in the other when they get to the quarterfinals. They have to play either Mad.
If they get first out of Group A, then the way seeding works, they play the last out of Group B, which gives them the best chance of playing the weakest team out of the group. Whereas if they scrape out in 4th, as you have them penciled in to do, they play Mad Team immediately out of the groups and have a real rough time.
Right, but I think that there is not, even though Mad Team is dominant, perhaps, I still don't. If they can't get first in their group, like by definition, every single one of the teams in their group is worse than the top 3 in Group B. So if they can't get first, then you expect them to lose in the quarterfinals. So in order to make it to the semifinals, they should get first.
I think the skill gap between Group A and Group B is significant. So if North America can't show that they can hold their own in Group A, then they don't have a hope of holding their own against Group B.
Right.
However, if they're trading even with Group A, and then they play Group B, then they have just as much a chance as any of the other teams from Group A. And I think that, or them coming out in first, having surprised us and being a step ahead, are both entirely reasonable scenarios.
The big thing for me, though, is that if they're holding their own, say they finished like second, right? And they did great. They nearly lose to HQ. They beat those other teams. Banner. Exactly. And they did good. Good job, North America. They still have to face, by my rankings, Vietnam, Team Flash. And that is still, they're still going to be underdogs if they finish second in their group.
Yeah.
So I think that if you realistically want North America to get to the semifinals, they need to finish, or not realistic. I mean, if you want them to get as favorites, then you want them to finish first.
I give North America a higher standard of play than I think you give them, but I also give them one freebie, one upset, right?
Mm-hmm.
I give them a 15% chance to just blow away a random team. And I think if they meet a team coming out of groups who hasn't prepped properly for them, who isn't concerned about them, and is already thinking about their next match, then there's a decent chance that North America are able to surprise one of the Group B teams, because I do think they're a step below many of the Group B teams, but I also think that step is a small one. It's a baby step. It's a Neil Armstrong step.
Okay. Anyway, so that's
one small step for AOV. What giant step for America?
Nice. Very well done. Okay, so if things go to form, then, or go according to my rankings, and like I mentioned, I am somewhat optimistic that North America won't finish in fourth in the group. But if they do go to the rankings, then it will be Chinese Taipei versus North America, Thailand versus Chinese Taipei wildcard, Vietnam versus Vietnam wildcard, and then Indonesia versus Thailand wildcard. The funny thing is, Group B is in favored in 3 out of 4 of those matches, which just sets up a crazy semifinals. All that said, now that we've gone over all the teams, now that we've gone over the logistics of how the group stages work, who do you see getting out of groups? And then just blow me through the entire tournament, TJ. What do you think happens the rest of the way?
Oh God, I need a whiteboard for this. I would say, I said I put NA in third. Other than that, my rankings are the same as yours. I put one team below NA coming out of Group A. I flip a coin. I think Korea or China actually come out in Group B. And I know that's undervaluing EVOS. And I don't think EVOS Indonesia are a bad team, but I do think that I have seen their level and it does not impress me. So I think that the odds that either Korea or China, one of those two, flip a coin and come out with level higher than Indonesia, individually are not likely, but combined, if you have two of them, the odds that one or both of them are better than Indonesia, pretty high. So I'll say I favor Korea there. So then my Group B rankings are Chinese Taipei, Thailand, Vietnam, Korea. And my Group A rankings are Thailand wildcard, Vietnam wildcard, North America, Chinese Taipei wildcard. That puts our first group stage match as the regional mix-up. One team, Chinese Taipei wildcard, versus Mad Team, Chinese Taipei. And that obviously is a blowout for Chinese Taipei main. Then you go down the list, you have Vietnam wildcard playing Thailand, and that goes to Thailand. Again, Group B's dominant. Or, sorry, you have North America playing Thailand, Toyota Diamond Cobra.
Yeah.
You're right. And North America versus Toyota Diamond Cobra is bad because, as you've been hearing, I've been talking up Toyota Diamond Cobra a ton. Once again, there is that 15 to 25% chance that North America just have another level. They get their free gimme there, but especially versus TDC, I don't favor them because J-Jack does his research, J-Jack does his homework. So I think that's a pretty bad scenario for North America, to be honest.
Yeah, you're not going to really pull one over on J-Jack, unfortunately.
Yeah. Vietnam wildcard comes out in second for Group A, in my estimation, which puts them up against the Vietnam main team, Team Flash.
Which is funny because the second place ends up being the wildcard ends up being the higher seed, which would be bizarre.
Yeah, but also I think that would be fixed real quick, because regional matchups, unless they have a history of being close, tend to be real predictable. And this does not have a history of being close, at least looking at the results. Now, I do think if North America beats Box, comes out second, I again think that's entirely possible. Then that's the best North America can hope for, because their odds of pulling one over on Team Flash are much higher. I think Team Flash, though they're a good team, are a team that can be upset on a world stage by a dedicated roster. So if NA gets second in Group A, I think they have their best chance of getting to semis.
Just to clarify, that's their best chance against the top 3 teams of Group B. Yes. Obviously, if they get first, that's the best chance.
Yes. I do favor AHQ over North America significantly, which is why I am not explicitly prepping for that scenario. In my beautiful world, AHQ come out first in Group A, and they play Korea from Group B. I don't know how scary Korea are. I've hypothesized they may be much better than Indonesia. Or we'll have to see. That would be kind of interesting if AHQ was taken out by a Korean roster. We'd find out.
Especially because AHQ used to be all Korean. But so then from there, your semifinals would be I don't know who would face each other in the semifinals, but you would have Chinese Taipei, Thailand, Vietnam or North America, and AHQ.
And I think there's a world in which NA gets to finals, but they have to be much better than we thought they were coming in, and they have to get real lucky.
NA in the finals. Oh, that reality.
Look,
it could happen.
I wouldn't have said things were going to line up that way until I saw the group draw. And they prayed to the right monkey's fist. I don't know what the cost is yet, but they did get the best possible group draw.
Yeah, well, hopefully they get even more monkey's fists if they want to make it to the finals. I think that what we're kind of in agreement on, though, is that we're likely to see Mad Team and TDC, or Chinese Taipei versus Thailand, in the finals. And you see that as a 50-50? Flash has a chance, yeah.
Yeah, outside to Team Flash, who could surprise us.
Yeah, once more.
And I also just don't know enough about Korea. Like, they are the real wild card for me. I favor them more than China, but I also think China could just randomly be real good. But I think if either Korea or China show up and are just good, then our pretty little models can get blown up.
Yeah, absolutely. If somehow Korea gets like second in the group, like where did this come from?
Yeah. What if Korea beats Team Flash? What happens then?
We just canceled the AWC. Like, no, this doesn't make any sense anymore.
Well, in a world in which Team Flash struggles to get out of groups, they have to work their way back through bottom seeding into the finals?
That's not as hard as it sounds, though, because you're starting off against AHQ, and then who they beat before, and then you're talking about, the same semifinal matchup that you're going to have the entire time. So
I think there is room for this Korean roster to randomly be real good, but I don't feel comfortable betting on it. I think them or the odds are higher that them or China are better than Indonesia than they are that Indonesia is better than both of them. However, I can't predict which of those two rosters will be better than Indonesia, nor by how much. Did that make sense?
Sure. I just thought of you.
Don't go to me for your gambling advice.
I was gonna say you picked up you mentioned gambling, and I don't know if there are gambling odds actually on this. There probably is, actually, considering how popular. Somewhere. But I'm just happy I'm not a gambling man, because we're considered experts, and I have really not a whole lot of idea of what's gonna happen even after all these predictions. So
I think the vast majority of matches can be gamed out.
Right.
I think
but you're getting terrible odds on those, though. You're getting 1-3 odds on the ones that are easy to predict.
You're right. I hadn't thought enough about the mechanics of gambling. You're a step ahead. I think the most room for movement is North America in Group A.
Right.
They either show up and are garbage. Maybe Japan has the power of anime, and they even upset them.
I think Group A, the top 4 could be anything, and I would not be surprised. Maybe if HQ are 4th, that would be weird.
I would be surprised if Japan or Malaysia got out of Group A.
Right. I mean, the top 4. Assuming that the top 4...
Within that top 4, however they sort out, who knows? There is a lot of room for movement there.
Yeah.
Group B, I would be incredibly astonished if it was not 1, 2, 3, Chinese, Taipei, Thailand, Vietnam. That just feels like it's set in stone.
In actually that order, yeah.
Yes, there is room maybe for Vietnam to come out on top of Thailand or vice versa, but I do feel it should be that way. Then, like I said, below that, I need a 3-sided coin to flip.
Nice. I'll try to procure that coin for you. Well, I see that you have fully embraced my long and rambling podcast style, TJ. Thank you for playing along. And that, I believe, will be it for our predictions, for all of our information for the AWC. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you hear more of our thoughts and our predictions and our interviews. What else have we got for them, TJ?
I'd just like to give a shout out to the fact that in King of Glory, there's a character who's a sleepy dream husbando who rides a dream whale. And it's actually real fun.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, that will do it for us then, I suppose, if you have nothing else to offer.
At every 6 seconds, he gets 35% damage reduction and a stacking AoE attack, a bit like Chognar's. Every 6 seconds. So you can build him full tank and just commit to these fights, and if you get the timing right, you just burst out damage. And every time this AoE pulse lands, it does more damage than previously, again like Chognar's, but it scales so much better. So you can just be a dreamy boy riding your dream whale into the middle of the 5-man roster and doing a ton of damage.
I am quite literally SMHing right now. Anyway. Make sure you subscribe, guys. Make sure you click the follow button. Make sure you do all the things that you do when you follow and subscribe to people. I don't even know, because I'm not very social media savvy. But
I got it. Do you want me to give you the YouTuber outro?
Oh yeah, do it.
Be sure to smash that like button as well as hit the subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified of future uploads on this channel, ring that bell. That'll send you a notification so you can join the squad.
Thanks for watching.